Greetings, everyone. I am Vincent Christopher A. Santiago of the Department of Linguistics at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. My presentation for this year's Southeast Asian Linguistic Society Conference is on the nominal anchoring functions of Porohanon common noun markers. So for those of you who are interested in this presentation, aside from this video, I have also included a write-up of my study. So this is the structure of my paper. And in the interest of keeping this presentation under 20 minutes, I will just be focusing on these sections of my study. So just to introduce what I have written, nominal anchoring is a vital component of any language. As a system, as a human system employed to refer to entities in the real world or to participants in a situation, various linguistic resources and structures are utilized to meet these needs. Notions traditionally associated with this, such as definiteness and specificity, have enjoyed a wide range and coverage and exhaustive discussion in the philosophy of language and theoretical linguistics literature. This paper examines the common noun markers of Porohanon, spoken primarily in the Municipality of Poro, Camotes, Cebu, Philippines. The common noun markers are analyzed for their nominal anchoring functions in written and spoken data. The present study is intended to be another building block toward a more comprehensive grammatical description of Porohanon, relatively understudied and underdescribed compared to the other varieties and languages of wider communication in the Visayas, such as Cebuano and Waray. R. David Zorc's monumental The Bisayan Dialects of the Philippines proved to be an indispensable resource for this study. One can even say that the work has already laid out the main lines of inquiry and has documented the most significant aspects of the grammars of the Bisayan varieties. Apart from lacunae in the Porohanon data acknowledged by the author up front, another niche that the current study intends to occupy is presenting findings from naturalistic speech data. While traditional sentence elicitation may already uncover the basic structures at work, it is my belief that transcriptions of continuous speech recordings would yield valuable complementary observations. Several language-specific resources are also consulted and will be cited throughout the rest of the paper. So in Table 2, I now present the common noun markers of Porohanon. For a discussion on ergativity in Porohanon, I would like to refer the viewer to page 3 of my handout. So Table 2 below lists the various forms of the common noun markers. They are categorized according to the core cases absolutive, ergative, genitive, and the oblique marker in the final column. The forms in boldface have already been identified by past authors such as Wolf in 1967 and Zorc in 1977, and are for the most part corroborated with the data that I have gathered. The rest of the alternate forms not in boldface will be discussed in the following subsections. Okay. Now I go to definiteness and specificity in Porohanon. Among the notions of nominal anchoring, definiteness seems to be the one that has received the most coverage in key works of Philippine morphosyntax. Despite the frequent reference to this notion, different scholars seem to have different versions of it and acknowledge different manifestations of it. So for my discussion on definiteness and specificity in Philippine languages and how it has been analyzed by different scholars, I refer you to pages 7 to 9 of my handout. So I'd like to zoom in on definiteness and specificity in Porohanon. Wolf 1967 distinguishes the first row of markers in Table 4 as quote unquote definite from the second row, which are quote unquote indefinite. However, he takes as a given the reader's notion of definiteness and does not really elaborate on it anywhere else in his paper. So, Zorc in 1977 stipulates that for the entire Bisayan complex, all dialects that have two genitive markers can make a distinction between definite and indefinite. He recognizes he recognizes the differences in formation of these common noun markers, stating that the vowel a almost always occurs in general definite or past markers, and the vowel e almost always occurs in indefinite or non-past markers. So, how does definiteness, purported to be the feature that distinguishes the two forms in the absolutive, operate in naturalistic speech? So now we have the following excerpt from a pair film narrative I recorded with Mr. Joseph Andriano. He is 33 years old, at least at the time of recording, and he hails from Barangay Tigis, Poro, Camotes, Cebu. And after watching the video of the pair film and thinking of what to say for a few moments, he begins by introducing his narrative with the sentence in number 5. Ara na ko'y istorya nimo, Sir Vinci. I already have a story for you, Sir Vinci. Wolf 1967 observed that the indefinite Cebuano marker cliticized y or y refers to an indefinite subject only in certain sets of expressions. Tanang Kingsing in 2011 later wrote that the referent is indefinite and is marked by the neutral marker cliticized y that phonologically attaches to the preceding unit. Wolf states that Porohanon makes a distinction that Cebuano does not make, in that it still has two unreduced forms for the subject marker an versus in. This is reflected in Table 4 above, or in the previous slide. It seems, though, that contemporary speakers of Porohanon like Sir Joseph tend to reduce this indefinite absolutive marker, just like in Cebuano. The phonological change is not yet absolute, however, since there are still instances where cliticized y retains its full form in, pronounced as in. See the following sentence from the article PESO, which stands for Public Employment and Service Office, Peso Mang Rehistro, from the Porohanon newsletter, issue September to October 2012. Inin pagpangrehistro nga gibuhat sa peso wa ini inbazad. This registration to peso, this has no payment. So you can see here that the marker used to mark the noun bazad, payment, it's not reduced. You still have the whole supposedly indefinite marker in. So now let's return to Sir Joseph's pair story narrative to see how the supposed definite counterpart of the absolutive common noun marker functions. In the story, our young male protagonist has gone off after his fall from the bicycle he was riding. However, according to Sir Joseph in number 7, nansara, nalimtan na niza, an izakalo. And now he had already forgotten his hat. In this example, the common noun marker an is selected for izakalo, his hat. Designating an as definite within the larger context of discourse would actually be very peculiar because this is the first time this referent is introduced, izakalo. Without the aid of the video, it is only through this sentence that our young male protagonist is specified as actually wearing a hat. If this is the very first time this referent izakalo, his hat, is pushed into the scene, so to speak, in this narrative, why is it being marked with a supposedly definite common noun marker when there is no prior knowledge of this referent on the addressee's part? Specificity, then, might be the more appropriate notion to associate with this form, especially since Reed and Liao in 2004 consider the presence of genitive marking an indicator that this referent is specific. Indeed, with the third person genitive preposed pronoun isa, the speaker's proposition is that the kalo, hat, is only the young male protagonist's and no one else's. So let us try to examine the ergative and genitive common noun markers this time. In this part of the story, the three children met by the young male protagonist have returned the hat which he had dropped. In return, the boy who owns the hat gave them each a pair. So the children part ways, and the gang of three who help the boy on the bicycle go along the path toward the farmer picking the pears from a tree. In sentence 8, ang tulo ka pusa, padung didto sa nangipo sin peras. The three children went back to the one who was picking pears. Analyzing the common noun marker sin as indefinite in the referential expression sin peras does not seem to work because the very beginning of the pear film is a shot of a middle-aged man up in a ladder on a tree picking pears. More importantly, it has already been established early on in Sir Joseph's narrative that this man in this video is indeed a man who picks pears. To consider sin as indefinite would be ignoring this knowledge of the referent by the speaker and the addressee. Analyzing it as non-specific, however, would yield a more accurate reading. Sin could be classified as non-specific since it was shown that the farmer had already picked multiple baskets of pears. What Sir Joseph's proposition is here is that the farmer is a person who simply picks pears, not one particular individuated pear, but rather just entities that would be considered pears. So now, can we therefore consider san or sa the specific counterpart? Let's see in the next sentence, in number 9. Diin ang Cebu giagihan sa bagso nga Yolanda, where the storm which is Yolanda passed by Cebu. Sentence 9 comes from the shared experiences of Mr. Abel Garciano, a municipal official at the local government unit of Poro, when Super Typhoon Yolanda hit Eastern Visayas in 2013. In sentence 9, we see the ergative marker sa, marking the common noun bagzo, storm. Bagzo is then being modified by the relative clause nga Yolanda, which is Yolanda. Following McFarland 1978 and Reed and Liao's 2004 criteria, the particular individual referent of bagzo is being specified not only through the use of the marker sa, but also through the relative clause nga Yolanda. So in conclusion, evidence from recordings of continuous discourse have shown that in terms of nominal anchoring, the common noun markers of Porohanon seem to encode a specific versus non-specific reading of the referent rather than a definite versus indefinite distinction as earlier assumed in the literature, such as in Wolf 1967 and Zork 1977. Thus, I propose the following common noun marking system for Porohanon. For the absolutive specific, you have an or ang. For the ergative specific, you have san or sa. For the genitive specific, san or sa. And for the absolutive non-specific, in, or its cliticized reduced form, y. The ergative non-specific, sin. The genitive non-specific, sin. And the oblique marker remains sa. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation and looking forward to your comments and questions.